Now that the popular Netflix series The Crown has wrapped, which explored the modern era of the British royal family, let's review the real relationship between the Queen and her sister, Princess Margaret, along with a brief history. Elizabeth Alexandra Mary was born April 21st, 1926, the eldest daughter of King George VI and Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. As Queen of the United Kingdom, England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, and other Commonwealth realms, she ruled from February 6, 1952, until her death in 2022, making her the longest reigning monarch in the UK, surpassing her great-great-grandmother, Queen Victoria. She was Queen Regnant of 32 sovereign states over the course of her lifetime and remained the monarch of 15 realms by the time of her death. When she was born, she was not the intended heir to the throne, nor was her father, but when her uncle Edward VIII famously abdicated in 1936 to marry American socialite and divorcee Wallis Simpson, it changed the course of history for the family. Though she spent much of her childhood with nannies, Princess Elizabeth was influenced greatly by her mother, who instilled in her a devout Christian faith as well as a keen understanding of the demands of royal life, while her grandmother, Queen Mary, consort of King George V, also instructed Elizabeth and her younger sister Margaret in the finer points of royal etiquette. Much of Her Majesty's childhood was spent surrounded by her family, their many animals, which included a lifelong love for horses and dogs. In fact, as queen, she kept many thoroughbred racehorses and frequently attended racing and breeding events, and her famous attachment to Pembroke Welsh corgis also began in childhood, owning more than 30 corgis over the course of her reign. As a young woman, when the country went to war, the Queen joined women across the nation in playing their part and trained as a mechanic, though Elizabeth and Margaret spent much of World War II living apart from their parents in the Royal Lodge at Windsor Castle, a medieval fortress outside London, before, in 1942, the King made Elizabeth an honorary colonel in the 500 Grenadier Guards, a Royal Army regiment, and 2 years later, he named her as a member of the Privy Council and the Council of State, enabling her to act on his behalf when he was out of the country. In 1947, soon after the royal family returned from an official visit to South Africa and Rhodesia, they announced Elizabeth's engagement to Prince Philip of Greece and a lieutenant in the Royal Navy, and were married for an extraordinary 73 years, until the prince died in April 2021 at the age of 99. They had 4 children together: King Charles, born 1948, Anne, born 1950, Andrew, born 1960, and Edward, born 1964. They were in Kenya on February 6, 1952, when King George succumbed to lung cancer at the age of 56, and his 25-year-old daughter became the 6th woman in history to ascend to the British throne. In the first decade of her reign, Elizabeth settled into her role as queen, developing a close bond with Prime Minister Winston Churchill, the first of 15 prime ministers she would work with during her reign, weathering various foreign affair disasters and making numerous state trips abroad. In response to pointed criticism in the press, the Queen embraced steps to modernize her own image and that of the monarchy, including televising her annual Christmas broadcast for the first time in 1957. Popular in the UK for nearly all of her long reign, the Queen was known for taking a serious interest in government and political affairs, apart from her ceremonial duties, and was credited with modernizing many aspects of the monarchy. Princess Margaret, Countess of Snowdon, was always the life of the party, and stories about her are legendary. Born August 21, 1930, Margaret was a royal rebel who followed a different path in life than her sister, as well as a very different personality. In childhood, from the moment that Elizabeth became his presumed successor, Margaret and Elizabeth were treated differently, prompting Margaret's alleged lament of, "Now that Papa is king, I am nothing." While Elizabeth ascended to the throne when she was 25, Margaret's adult life always made room for fun. She liked going to the theater and nightclubs, and sometimes didn't return home until the early hours of the morning. She fascinated the public because she seemed unafraid of change and was willing to push boundaries. At a time when upper-class women were not supposed to smoke in public, Margaret was seen enjoying a post-dinner cigarette, frequently drinking, indulging in late-night parties, and her fashion choices influenced millions of women. The public's interest was further ignited by Margaret's love story with Peter Townsend, a handsome war hero turned royal equerry. Margaret's feelings for him were evident at her sister's coronation in 1953. Townsend was divorced, but most people wanted Margaret to be with the man she loved. But the establishment, government, church, and palace opposed the match given Queen Elizabeth was head of the Church of England, which didn't accept divorce. Margaret and Townsend were therefore separated, and in 1955, a statement announced she would follow her duty and not marry him. Though other factors may have been at play, public perception was that Margaret had been kept from the man she loved because of old, outdated rules. She eventually married Anthony Armstrong Jonas, later the Earl of Snowdon, in 1960, and had social fun with people like Peter Sellers and the Beatles. To John Lennon, she was priceless margarine. The subject of much scandal and criticism over her life, Gore Vidal claimed Margaret once told him, "When there are two sisters, and one is the queen who must be the source of honor and all that is good, the other must be the focus of the most creative malice, the evil sister." While it's not certain Margaret actually uttered those words, it's true that her behavior could make Queen Elizabeth shine in comparison. Margaret was criticized for excessive expenses, leaving her young children frequently for vacations, and being photographed with a younger man while she was still married. Yet, though the Queen may not have always approved of her sister's behavior, the two remained close until Margaret's death in 2002 at the age of 71. "Lilibet is my pride, Margaret is my joy," King George once said of his two daughters, Queen Elizabeth and Princess Margaret Rose. The dramatic differences between the royal sisters may have been their relationship's greatest strength in the end. While Princess Margaret was seen as a royal wild child and the black sheep of the royal family, she loved her sister and respected the monarchy. Her behavior, good and bad, often presented a contrast to the Queen's. Yet, despite their assigned places in history, their devotion to each other never wavered. Princess Margaret had a telephone with a direct line to her sister at Buckingham Palace. They called each other every day to gossip and laugh, according to friend Reynaldo Herrera. They had a love, friendship, and conspiracy that were impressive to behold, he wrote. And when Princess Margaret passed, Queen Elizabeth openly cried at her funeral, one of the only times the monarch has shown emotion in a public setting.